Hello, welcome. Dr. Sushma Singh this side. Today in Unit 11, Marriage and its Changing Patterns, we are going to start our lecture with the topic Age at Marriage in India. Apart from marriage being almost universal, early marriage is also common in India. As early as the 18th and 19th century, efforts were made to curb infant or child marriage. Reformers like Raja Ram Mohan Rai, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, Jyoti Rao Phule, and others in the 19th and the early 20th century opposed child marriage. According to Das and they, the current level of age at the marriage in India is low in comparison to most of the low fertility countries. You should also pay attention to differences between various religious groups, classes and castes in the matter of age at marriage. The median age at marriage is low in India. This is in spite of legislation, multi-pronged strategies to spread awareness regarding the dangers of early marriage, starting with Rajasthan, where the female age at marriage was 17.5, the lowest in India in 1991, and going up to Assam, where it was 21.1, the highest in India in 1991. The mean age at marriage for females for 1991 was 18.3. In newspapers and journals, we read about the marriage fairs, especially in rural areas, in which the average age of the bride is reported to be below 15 years. In some states like Orissa, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, and Rajasthan, child marriages continue. Both the Times of India and the Hindustan Times reported on the occasion of Aktij festival of 2005 that the girls in some area refused to participate in such marriage fairs and expressed a strong desire to continue their studies. These girls were aware that the minimum legal age at marriage is 18 years for girls. More than the awareness about the minimum age of marriage, the change in attitude of young girls and the positive articulation of the choice of continuing their education are the signs of changing patterns of marriage in India. For the connection between low age at marriage and the notion of preserving the chastity or purity of the woman. Female age at marriage rose from 16.1 years in 1961 to 19.3 in 1991. The rural-urban gap in female age at marriage for 1991 was 2 years. Accordingly to Das and they, this indicates that in spite of rising age at the marriage, a wide gap in this matter persisted between the rural and urban areas of the country. It is important to note the variation in the age at the marriage among different communities in India. For instance, the average age at marriage is as low as 15 years for girls among many of the hill tribes in India, while among the Christians, Parsis, and some educated sections living in urban areas, the age at marriage has been above the minimum age prescribed by law. For the factor that helps to raise the age at marriage, it is a good idea to complete for gathering your own mini database on the age at marriage in India. Now let us move to the next point, rules regulating marriage. In all societies, we find ways of regulating who may not marry whom and who may marry whom. Ancient rules. The rules of ancient decide who is outside the category of those one can marry. Can you quickly count up to 10 such persons whom you cannot allow to marry under any circumstances? If yes, you already know about the ancient rules. Incest refers to sexual union of near kins. Now let us move to the point positive endogamy and negative exogamy. There are positive and negative rules of marriage to determine the unit within which one should marry and the unit within which one must not marry. The positive rule pertain to the unit of endogamy within which one can marry. In India, among the Hindus, this refers by and large to one's caste or subcaste. The negative rules pertain to the unit of exogamy within which one must not marry. Among the higher caste Hindus, this unit is one's gotra, within which one is not allowed to marry. Do you remember reading in the newspaper reports about the marriage between the persons of the same gotra? Local caste panchayats have reportedly taken action against such couples, though the courts have upheld their marriages. Such cases are indicators of changes in the perception of people about rules of marriage. Even the unit of endogamy is no longer a universally accepted unit of positive rules of marriage. For a detailed discussions of the rules of endogamy, including the rules of hypergamy and hypogamy, we will read in the another block. Now let us move to the point intercaste, interreligious same-sex marriages. You must have noticed many intercaste, interreligious marriages taking place in modern time. In legal terms, all such marriages are valid, and in social terms too, they are fast gaining full recognition. As long as marriages follow the norms of a heterosexual union, society in India is culturally accepting such marriages. Indeed, as mentioned before, there are yet more alternate forms of marital union reportedly taking place in India, and we have to wait and watch their fate in our socio-cultural milieu. Such unions relate to two persons of the same sex deciding to live as husband and wife. It is not clear what terms we should be using to describe such relationship. It is apparent that the current predominance of a heteronormativity in marriage relationship leaves little scope for exploring different forms of relationship. One is not sure if queer or marginalized sexualities can occupy a recognizable space in the mainstream culture. Now the next point is the case of migrant tribals. I would also mention at this point the little mentioned situation with regard to tribe population in India. With the erosion of the socio-cultural fabric and traditional economic structures of most tribal groups in India, we find them occupying spaces available to migrant labor. Staying back in the native territories means to them the specter of starvation, and moving out in search of livelihood gives them subsistence at survival level. In the midst of this scenario, most migrant tribal women laborers continues to live with the constant fear of sexual abuse. Will it then make any sense if we were to discuss different forms of marriage traditionally found among the tribal communities of India? In this context, you can usefully look at the case studies carried out under the auspices of the Center for Women's Development Study by Banerjee. Now the next point is rules applicable to married adults. Besides the above issue, we need to also consider those rules which regulate the conduct of already married persons. The negative rules are those of adultery that restricts sexual access to those already married. You may observe the positive side of the rules of polygamous and the levirate or sororate or Islamic short-term marriage, whereby already married persons have sexual access to specified married persons. Now the next point is breaking rules of marriage. Discussions of rules of marriage throw better light on basic structures and processes when we study them in the context of the rules being broken. For example, effectiveness of caste or subcaste endogamy can be judged only by looking at the number of intercaste marriages and their sooner or later acceptance by the kin group. In this connection, the interface between the caste and caste gains relevance, and their relative class status of the spouse is often a sufficient condition to render an intercaste marriage more acceptable in due course. Further increase in the number so-called urban villages has made inroad into the levels of the socio-cultural acceptance of the deviant behavior of the younger generation. In India, we find the commonly listed form of marriages such as monogamy and polygamy, or the woman, the later, that is polygamy with its two forms, namely polygyny, where marriage of a man to several women at the time, and polyandry, marriage of the woman to several men at a time, is also prevalent in different parts of the country. In ancient text of Hindu, we find reference to 8 forms of marriages. These forms refer basically to the methods by which a spouse is acquired. Let us now take a brief look at the patterns of selecting one's spouse before moving on to discussion of the spouse sections. Here we want to close this lecture. Thanks for listening.